he's flying in on a two-seater experimental aircraft that he built. And I said, I'm a pilot. I don't think I would get on his aircraft.
An experimental
Right.
aircraft.
So, and I thought about it. And I said, this guy is flying in on a two-seater experimental aircraft that he built to pitch me on a five-seater experimental sub that he built to go to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. And I'm like, if I wouldn't get on his aircraft, should I really get on his sub?
Exactly.
Right. So he didn't lend credibility by saying he was flying in on an experimental aircraft that he built. So as enticing as the opportunity was, he still wanted to look at it and make sure that it was safe, and he raised some concerns that when he raised them, I shared.
And then Stockton disregarded.
As a different opinion that was incorrect.
Yeah, misinformed.
I want to key in on that word, misinformed, because that's very telling in a lot of different ways, because that in itself is a persuasion tactic. Because when you think about authority, who technically has more authority in this conversation as it relates to knowledge of the industry? It would be him. He's the one who's been in it for a long time. Right. And so you've done your homework, you've researched, and you've seen these red flags. Yeah. And so really, in a lot of ways, what we're playing here is a confidence game. Because Jay, like you said, the passion of his conviction, he's very persuasive because he genuinely believes it, and he is passionate about what he believes in. And it seems like in a lot of these conversations, other people could be persuaded not only by that passion, but also they could start to question themselves and say, well, he has the experience. Who am I to question somebody with that much experience?
I didn't care. That's why I questioned it. I knew he was wrong. I was like, there is no way. You look at the people that have gone down there, like James Cameron and Robert Ballard, the guy that found the Titanic, and you look at the equipment they used to get to that part of the ocean, the bottom of the ocean. Like, it's no joke when you have tens of millions of pounds of pressure pushing up against you, and anything can go wrong at any second. So when I looked into it, I found that video that's been floating around all over the media now. I found this early when it had almost no views. It was a video of Stockton explaining how the submarine worked and how it was controlled. I'm sure you've seen it. He shows this little like 1990 Logitech game controller thing. Looks like an Xbox controller, kind of like an old one. And he's like, this is how the entire submarine is operated. And there's like one touch screen. And then it's just like, not only the first red flag was the way the submarine was controlled, but also the structural integrity of the submarine. It was made out of carbon fiber. Carbon fiber shatters like glass when it's put up against that kind of pressure. And you're going to take that to the bottom of the ocean and shove 5 people plus into it. Like, red flags all over the place.
Well, and that's
all over the place.
When he came out to see me in March, he said he was flying himself in.
Oh, another red flag.
He was coming into North Las Vegas Airport.
Yeah.
I thought that was strange. Most people come into, it used to be McCarran, now it's Harry Reid International. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or they come into Henderson Executive. When you fly private, those are really where you go.
Yeah. So
I asked him why he was going to North Las Vegas, and he said, well, he's flying in on a 2-seater experimental aircraft that he built. And I said, I'm a pilot. I don't think I would get on his aircraft.
An experimental aircraft.
So, and I thought about it. I said, this guy is flying in on a 2-seater experimental aircraft that he built to pitch me on a 5-seater experimental sub that he built to go to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. And I'm like, if I wouldn't get on his aircraft, should I really get on his sub?
Exactly.
Right. So he didn't lend credibility by saying he was flying in on an experimental aircraft that he built.
No, yeah, that made the whole situation worse for sure.
Yeah. Hey, Sean, I want to dig into one of the things that you said, because I don't want to gloss over the depth of it. Because one of the things that you said was when he was coming to you with authority and passion, you didn't care. When he called you misinformed, you didn't care. And that is something that is rare, because a lot of times we care about things that we shouldn't care about, and that puts unnecessary pressure on us and leads us to make bad decisions. And when you think about the stoicism, we have to think about the philosophy of Stoicism and the fact that with Stoic philosophy, we're maintaining a focus on the things that are within our control, but also making sure that we're disregarding the things that don't matter as much. And so it is an art form, it's a skill, and it takes a strong person to be able to not care about somebody else's opinion of them in one of these difficult conversations. So I want to dig into that mentality a little bit more to see if we can break down how you were able to be that resilient in that moment so other people could kind of replicate that in their difficult conversations.
Yeah, I'm typically critical of a lot of situations that we find ourselves in. We do a lot of fun stuff, you know, we hang out with a lot of people. I'm very critical of people. I'm very critical of opportunities. I'm just overall a critical person because I don't trust people know what they're talking about. I don't trust people are telling the truth most of the time. People will say anything to get whatever it is they want out of you, you know what I mean? And then in this particular situation, I mean, in my head, it was a no-brainer because I knew Stockton really believed in what he's doing, and I'm no submarine expert, obviously, at all. All I did was some Google searches, watch some YouTube videos, and I just, you know, I didn't think it took a genius to see that this was obviously not a good situation. And one of the craziest parts about this, actually, when the news came out that the sub went missing, are two running theories. Before I get into like why I, you know, was opposing Stockton,
three running theories.
Yeah, three running theories was the sub probably got stuck in the Titanic because Stockton liked to go inside the Titanic a little bit. There was a little hole inside the Titanic, so we thought it either got stuck. I only had two. I mean, there was a third one, but I only had two. And the second theory was it just straight up imploded from the pressure. Right. So those were the two running theories we had.
The third theory is that they were floating at the top and lost radio communication, just waiting to be found.
Yeah, I didn't think that. The
consequences of the three, if they were floating at the top waiting to be found, this is another red flag.
Yeah.
The hatch that goes on the sub bolts on with 18 bolts from the outside.
Yeah.
You cannot open the hatch from the inside.
Yeah.
And it's airtight.
Yeah.
And it's sealed. So if they were floating around at the top of they could be above the water line and still suffocate on the sub because they can't get out, right? So that's one potential outcome. The second potential outcome is it imploded on the way down, which turned out is actually
that was my running theory. That's exactly what I was going to tell Stockton. I thought was going to happen, but
and then the third concern is they went down to the bottom, they reached the wreck, and then there is a hole in the side of the Titanic where you can see the ground ballroom, and Stockton would put the nose of the sub in to see what, you know, to show the inside of the Titanic.
Yeah.
And if they did that, the wreckage is 111 years old and it's decaying. If something fell on the sub, they'd be trapped.
They'd be trapped under the sub.
And the consequences of that's the worst outcome of all, because they lose power. Without power, they have no light, so it's pitch black. They have no heat, so it's 31 degrees. They have no food and water, and all they have is the knowledge that their oxygen is going to run out in a couple of days. So that was the worst of the scenarios. Obviously, the best is they were floating around top and got found.
Yeah, but I never thought that.
But what happened, as tragic as it is that it imploded, the implosion happened in less than a millisecond. The brain takes 20 milliseconds to process a reflex, so it just cut to black. They never knew what happened.
Yeah.
And at least that's merciful and a much better outcome than getting stuck at the bottom.
Basically, yeah. Yeah. Sorry I didn't answer your question. You kind of skewed off into something else, but I just thought it was important to talk about why not only I thought it would be a bad idea to go, but also the running theories we had turned out to be true, which my number one thing was that it imploded. And I think it was his too. So to answer your question overall, it was mainly because I didn't think Stockton had enough experience, even though he claimed to have had experience. I think that he's gone down there. How many times did he go down there total? Like
twice.
He went down there like twice. Well, he went down there 3 times last year, according to one source, and this would have been the first voyage this year. And I just didn't think he went down there enough times. That was another red flag for me. I think James Cameron and Bob Ballard and all these people have gone to deep parts of the ocean hundreds of times. Like, and Stockton's only done it a couple times in this little thing. Like there wasn't enough experience. There wasn't enough background.
My takeaway from your question is that no matter how well educated or well versed somebody is in a topic, their judgment can be clouded by their emotion. If they're coming from a place of passion and not reason, they can draw the wrong conclusion no matter how experienced they are. And that's what happened to Stockton.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the major takeaways that I want listeners to get from this is when it's appropriate to be persuaded and when it's not appropriate to be persuaded. Because what we're seeing here is he was giving you a lot of attempts to influence with passion and confidence, but not much substance. And so we have to be able to stay focused and recognize there's a difference between information and influence. And so those attempts to influence, we should ignore those attempts. And Sean, like you said, I don't care about that. I need information, and I'm light on information now. And I think a way to make this really clear to the audience is this. Let's flip the situation. Let's say you're having the conversation and he uses a different approach. What would it have taken for him to persuade both of you to go down?
I wouldn't have been persuaded just because of the operation. There wasn't enough experience. There was too many risks and dangers. And again, the way the submarine was controlled, that was a huge red flag for me. I don't think he could have persuaded me to go, and that's why we ultimately ended up not going. For me, maybe, but for me, no.
For me, it would be independent, third-party, objective, dispassionate review and comment.
He had that. He had that. He did, and everyone said it wasn't safe. Well, he had people telling him there's people at OceanGate that said it wasn't safe.
Okay. So it would be a third-party, independent, dispassionate review and approval saying it's safe.
Yes,
and approval.
Exactly. That's what would do it.
Look, if I wanted to go to space, I would go with Elon Musk. I would go with Jeff Bezos. I would go with
Richard
Branson, because they're well funded and they have the resources and the expertise and the talent to do it safely, right? But if you called me and said, "Hey, I built a rocket in my backyard, let's go," I'd be like, "Have a nice flight."
Yep.
And maybe I'll see you if you come back.
Yeah.